Every single night, somewhere between midnight and 3 inches the morning, more than 15 million Americans lie perfectly still in a dark bedroom with one unbearable problem. Their feet are on fire, not metaphorically, not warm, on fire. A deep, searing, crawling burn that starts somewhere in the arch, spreads toward the toes, sometimes climbs up toward the ankle. The sheets feel like sandpaper. You kick them off, you press your soles against the cool wall, and buy yourself maybe 30 seconds of relief, and then the burn comes back. You have tried elevating your legs. You have tried soaking your feet in cold water before bed. You have tried compression socks, magnesium cream, expensive foot rollers. Maybe you even bought special diabetic socks because someone on the internet told you that is what this is. And when you finally sat across from a doctor and described it, the burning, the tingling, the feeling that your feet do not quite belong to you anymore, you got one of two answers. If you have diabetes, you were told, that's neuropathy. It's what happens. If you don't have diabetes, you were told, we'll monitor it. You left with no protocol, no explanation of what was actually happening inside your nerves, and no realistic path to sleeping through the night again. I want to change that tonight. I'm Dr. Laura Chen. Subscribe and hit like this channel exists because the system is built to manage symptoms, not correct causes. That's economics, not malice. But you deserve to understand what is actually happening in your body. Let's get into it. Here is what almost everyone with burning feet has been told, explicitly or implicitly: this is a diabetes problem. If you're diabetic, it's diabetic neuropathy, irreversible nerve damage from years of elevated blood sugar, and the most you can do is slow the progression. If you're not diabetic, the unspoken assumption is that you're heading there. And this is an early warning. Both of those conclusions are dangerously incomplete. And for a significant portion of people lying awake right now with burning feet, they are flat wrong. The burning in your feet is a nerve signal. That much is true. But the question nobody is asking, the question that actually determines what you do about it, is this: why are those nerves misfiring? Elevated blood sugar is one answer. It is not the only answer. And in a large percentage of cases, especially in adults over 60, especially in people already taking medication for blood sugar, the actual cause is a deficiency so common and so correctable that it should be the very first thing tested. Almost never is. To understand what is happening, you need to understand what a peripheral nerve actually is. Your peripheral nerves are the long communication lines that run from your spinal cord all the way to the tips of your toes, the longest continuous nerve fibers in your entire body. In a 6-foot man, the fiber running to the big toe is nearly a meter long, a single unbroken biological wire carrying electrical signals across that entire distance, every second of every day. Wrapped around each of those fibers is a coating called myelin. Think of it exactly like the rubber insulation around a copper telephone wire, the kind that used to run between cities on wooden poles. That coating has one job: keep the signal clean, fast, and contained, prevent it from leaking, crossing, or distorting somewhere along the route. When the myelin sheath is intact, nerve signals travel at roughly 70 meters per second. Touch your toe, your brain receives the message almost instantly. Everything works. Now imagine that rubber insulation slowly starting to peel. The copper wire beneath it is still intact. The signal is still trying to travel. But without that protective coating, something changes. Signals that should move cleanly begin to leak into surrounding tissue. They cross, they scramble, and the nervous system, trying to make sense of corrupted data, starts generating readings that correspond to nothing actually happening: heat signals from nerves that have not been heated, pain signals in response to sensation that should register as completely neutral. The sheets brushing your feet at midnight, a light, harmless contact, arrives at your brain labeled fire. That is what is happening to your feet, not damage from blood sugar in isolation. In many cases, progressive degradation of the myelin sheath from a deficiency in the one vitamin your nerves cannot function without: vitamin B12. Before I go further, I need to stop and tell you directly. There are symptoms that mean you close this video and contact your doctor today, not next week, not after the weekend. If your burning is accompanied by visible muscle wasting, if your feet or lower legs look thinner or weaker than they did a year ago, that needs evaluation today. If the burning has spread above your knee and is climbing, see a neurologist. If you have burning combined with loss of balance, stumbling, or difficulty walking a straight line, that is a neurological urgency. If you have any unexplained weight loss in the last 2 months alongside these symptoms, please see a physician before doing anything else. If none of those apply, you are dealing with something correctable. Let's continue. Not all burning feet come from the same place. In clinical practice, I see three distinct presentations, and the root mechanism behind each points in a slightly different direction. Type 1 is the diabetic who is actually B12 depleted. This is the most common and the most missed. The patient has type 2 diabetes, has been on metformin for several years, and develops peripheral burning. Everyone assumes the diabetes is damaging the nerves. But metformin, one of the most widely prescribed medications in the world, blocks the absorption of B12 in the small intestine. It has been doing this reliably and measurably since it was introduced. Research published in the journal Diabetes Care has documented that long-term metformin use reduces B12 levels in a significant proportion of patients, in some studies more than 30%. The nerve damage these patients are experiencing may have nothing to do with blood sugar. Their blood sugar is often well controlled. The damage is from a medication-induced nutritional deficiency that nobody checked for, because checking for it does not generate a billing code. Type 2 is the non-diabetic over 60 with gradual onset. Burning starts mildly, maybe just the balls of the feet, maybe only at night. This person has never had elevated blood sugar. What they have is a stomach lining that is quietly producing less intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is the protein your stomach makes specifically to escort B12 through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream. After 60, intrinsic factor production declines in many people, sometimes dramatically. You can eat animal protein every single day and still develop B12 deficiency because the absorption mechanism has degraded. The amount reaching your blood is a fraction of what it was at 45. Type 3 is the one nobody connects to the feet. This person's burning is accompanied by other strange symptoms: fatigue that doesn't lift with sleep, occasional numbness in the hands, a subtle change in mood or memory they've blamed on stress. What they actually have is a systemic B12 deficiency affecting multiple systems at once. The feet announce it first because the longest peripheral nerves are always the most vulnerable. They require the most myelin maintenance. They are the first to show the cost when that maintenance stops. Margaret was 72 when she came to see me. She had managed type 2 diabetes for 11 years on metformin. Her blood sugar numbers were consistently good. Her endocrinologist was satisfied. But for the past 2 years, she had not slept through a single night. She described her feet the way people describe a burn from touching a hot stove, except it had never stopped. She had bought 3 different types of shoes, cut the elastic from all her socks, and slept with her feet outside the blanket regardless of the season. Her assumption, shared by every clinician she had seen, was diabetic peripheral neuropathy. Irreversible, manageable at best. I looked at her file and noticed something. In 11 years of quarterly blood work, her B12 level had never once been measured. I ordered it that afternoon. Her result came back at 178 picograms per milliliter. The laboratory reference range begins at 200. Most neurologists consider anything below 400 functionally deficient for sustained nerve health. At 178, Margaret's nerves had been running on fumes for an unknown length of time. I asked her one question she had never been asked. Is the burning worse now than it was 5 years ago, even though your blood sugar numbers have been stable throughout? She paused. Then, yes, significantly worse. That told me exactly what I needed to know. Here is the precise physiology of what was happening in Margaret's body and in the bodies of the millions of people who have been given the wrong explanation for this symptom. B12 is not simply a vitamin. It is the primary raw material your nervous system uses to manufacture and repair myelin. Without adequate B12, the cells responsible for producing myelin, called Schwann cells, cannot complete that work. Production slows, existing myelin thins. The insulation on your nerve fibers begins to peel, exactly like that telephone wire left exposed to weather for too many seasons. Here's the detail that changes everything about the timeline. The longest peripheral nerves, the ones running to your feet, require the most myelin. And they are also the slowest to show symptoms because the degradation works from the extremities inward. By the time burning feet appear, B12 deficiency has typically been developing for 2, 3, sometimes 5 years. Your feet are telling you about a problem that started long ago in your stomach lining, or in a medication interaction, or in a gradual dietary shift that nobody ever flagged. Metformin interferes with a specific receptor in the final section of the small intestine called the cubolin receptor. This is the receptor that captures the B12 intrinsic factor complex and pulls it across the intestinal wall into the bloodstream. Metformin competes with that absorption process. After years of daily use, it can reduce B12 absorption by 30 to 40%. The reduction is dose dependent and cumulative. Every year on the medication without monitoring, the deficit deepens. The result, if you do not supplement or test, is exactly what Margaret had: controlled blood sugar, deteriorating nerves, and a symptom burning feet that everyone misattributed to the disease the medication was successfully treating. There are two things you can assess right now, tonight, that require no equipment and no appointment. The first is the vibration test. Take a metal fork or spoon from your kitchen drawer, place it in ice water for 30 seconds. Remove it and press the handle firmly against the sole of your foot, then your ankle, then just below your knee. Then press it against your wrist. Can you feel the vibration equally at all points, or does it seem muted or absent in the foot compared to the wrist? Impaired vibration sense is one of the earliest measurable signs that peripheral nerve conduction is compromised. If the vibration feels notably weaker in the foot than in the arm, that is clinically meaningful. Write it down and bring it to your next physician visit. The second is the texture test. Close your eyes. Have someone lightly draw a clean fingernail across the top of your foot, then your shin, then your forearm. Does the sensation feel comparable across all three, or does the foot feel somehow blunted, less defined, slightly duller, even if it burns at night? Burning and numbness coexist in peripheral neuropathy because different nerve fiber types are affected at different rates. A foot that burns at midnight but registers less texture sensation than your forearm in the afternoon is a foot whose peripheral sensory nerves are already showing compromise. Neither test replaces a blood draw. Both give you specific observational information to bring into that conversation, and they change the conversation. Three things that are actively worsening burning feet in people who do not connect them to the symptom at all. The first is regular evening alcohol, even moderate amounts. Alcohol is directly toxic to peripheral nerve fibers and simultaneously depletes both B12 and B1 thiamine, two vitamins essential for myelin maintenance and nerve signal regulation. 2 glasses of wine at dinner feels entirely harmless in isolation. Across years, in a person whose B12 absorption is already declining due to age or medication, it accelerates the deficit in a way that is measurable on a blood test. If your feet burn and you drink regularly, you have found a significant contributing variable. The second is a diet that has quietly drifted away from animal protein. B12 exists almost exclusively in animal foods: meat, eggs, dairy, shellfish. There is no plant food that reliably delivers meaningful bioavailable B12. Many older adults reduce their animal protein intake over the years because of cost, dental changes, reduced appetite, or dietary advice they received decades ago. That gradual drift, combined with declining intrinsic factor production, creates a deficiency that builds in silence. The third is the proton pump inhibitor trap. PPIs, omeprazole, pantoprazole, esomeprazole are among the most commonly prescribed medications in adults over 60. They suppress stomach acid, which is exactly their intended function. But stomach acid is required to cleave B12 from food proteins so it can bind to intrinsic factor. Without sufficient acid, that step does not happen. B12 sits in the digestive tract unabsorbed. Research published in JAMA found that long-term PPI use was associated with a significantly elevated risk of B12 deficiency. If you take a PPI daily and you have burning feet, those two facts belong in the same conversation. The three dietary interventions with the most direct impact on peripheral nerve recovery and the reason behind each one. Sardines, canned in water or olive oil, 3 times per week. A single 100-gram serving contains roughly 8 micrograms of B12, more than 3 times the recommended daily intake, in a form that is highly bioavailable even in people with moderately reduced intrinsic factor. Sardines also deliver omega-3 fatty acids, which have documented anti-inflammatory effects on peripheral nerve tissue. Inexpensive, no preparation required. 3 servings a week is the threshold that begins to make a difference. Beef liver, 1 ounce 2 to 3 times per week, the single most concentrated natural source of B12 available as food. Approximately 70 micrograms per 100 grams, roughly 30 times the daily requirement. If the flavor is an obstacle, incorporate it into a meat sauce or combine it with ground beef at a ratio that makes it undetectable. The concentration is so high that even a small weekly amount contributes meaningfully to restoring depleted stores. 2 egg yolks daily, prepared however you prefer. Each yolk provides approximately 0.45 micrograms of B12 and a meaningful amount of choline, a nutrient directly involved in the structural integrity of the myelin sheath that most people have never heard of, and almost nobody tracks. Choline deficiency accelerates the same myelin degradation that B12 deficiency causes. Eggs address both in a single, inexpensive, accessible food, every morning without exception. Here's the protocol, one sequenced approach, morning through evening, built on exactly the physiology I have described. Morning. Before breakfast, spend 30 seconds with your feet. Press both thumbs firmly into the arch of each foot and hold for 5 seconds. Notice whether the sensation is symmetric, whether the pressure registers as equally defined on both sides. Meaningful asymmetry noticed consistently over several days is information worth reporting. Then, eat your 2 eggs. Add sardines or liver 2 to 3 mornings per week. And if you are on metformin or a PPI, contact your prescribing physician today, not at your next scheduled appointment. Ask specifically for serum B12 and methylmalonic acid. Methylmalonic acid is the more sensitive marker and will catch functional deficiency earlier than B12 alone. Daytime, walk 20 minutes minimum, not for cardiovascular benefit, for peripheral circulation. The nerve fibers at your feet depend on consistent blood flow for oxygen and nutrient delivery. Every contraction of the calf muscle during walking pushes oxygenated blood down through the small vessels surrounding those fibers. People who sit for most of the day show measurably reduced peripheral circulation in the extremities. Your longest nerves at the far end of that supply line are the first to feel it. 20 minutes is the minimum threshold for maintaining meaningful perfusion. Evening. 1 hour before bed, prepare a warm foot soak, 100 to 102 degrees Fahrenheit, comfortable but genuinely warm. Add 2 tablespoons of magnesium chloride flakes, available at most pharmacies or health food stores. Soak for 15 minutes. Magnesium is required for nerve signal regulation at the cellular level. It functions as a natural damper on nerve excitability, reducing the rate at which sensory nerve endings fire. In magnesium-deficient tissue, nerves become hyperreactive. They trigger at lower thresholds. Sensations that should register as neutral register as burning. Transdermal absorption through the foot soak bypasses the digestive system entirely, which matters for people with impaired gut absorption. Before bed, lie flat and elevate your feet on 2 firm pillows, heels roughly 8 inches above heart level. Hold that position for 10 minutes while breathing with a 4-count inhale, 4-count hold, and 6-count exhale. The elevation improves venous return from the feet and reduces the mild vascular congestion that amplifies nerve irritation at night. The breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering the baseline level of neural excitability that makes burning more intense when you are still and the room is quiet. Margaret began B12 supplementation under medical supervision, first with weekly intramuscular injections to rapidly restore her depleted stores, then with high-dose sublingual B12 daily, which bypasses the absorption problem by entering the bloodstream directly through the mucous membranes under the tongue. Within 3 weeks, the burning had dropped from what she described as an 8 out of 10 to a 5. Within 2 months, she was sleeping to 5 inches the morning consistently. At her 6-month follow-up, her B12 level was 540. Her feet, she told me, felt like her feet again. 11 years managing type 2 diabetes, 2 years with burning feet, and in 11 years of quarterly blood work, nobody had run the one test that explained the symptom she was suffering from most. Your 5-step plan for tonight and tomorrow morning. Step 1. Think through every medication you take daily. Metformin, a PPI, anticonvulsants, or any long-term acid-suppressing drug, contact your prescribing physician this week and ask specifically for serum B12 and methylmalonic acid levels. Not at your next routine appointment. This week, step 2, run the texture test tonight. Both feet, both shins, both forearms. Compare the definition of sensation. Write down what you notice and keep that note. Step 3, remove alcohol from your evenings for 30 days. Not permanently if you prefer not to, but 30 days of elimination. If the burning decreases, you have found a contributing factor that is entirely within your control. Step 4, begin the evening foot soak tonight. Warm water, 15 minutes. Magnesium chloride flakes if you can find them this week. Plain warm water if you cannot. The temperature regulation alone provides short-term relief while the deeper restoration begins. Step 5. Tomorrow morning, make a deliberate shift at breakfast. 2 eggs, a tin of sardines. Commit to this pattern for 4 weeks. You are giving your nervous system the raw material it has been running short of, possibly for years. How old are you? Write it in the comments below. I want to see who is watching this channel, because the B12 absorption picture changes significantly across age groups. And knowing whether most of you are in your 50S, 60S, or 70S will shape exactly what I cover next. I'm Dr. Laura Chen. 15 years of clinical practice has shown me one pattern more reliably than almost any other. People suffer from symptoms that are not mysterious, not inevitable, and not untreatable because they have never been given the mechanism. The burning in your feet is a nerve signal. The nerve needs myelin. The myelin needs B12. And in a great many cases, the B12 is absent not because of age, not because of irreversible disease, but because of something entirely correctable, a medication interaction nobody flagged, an absorption problem nobody checked. If tonight gave you a starting point, send this to someone who has been told to simply live with it. They may be one blood test away from an answer they were never offered. Subscribe, hit like, and I'll see you in the next video.